bit of that. And 1 second here while I get us onto Facebook. Great. So good evening, everyone. Welcome. We are just going live now. We are recording here on Zoom. We'll be posting it to YouTube later this evening or tomorrow. It's also live on Facebook, so you're welcome to stream there too if you are. Welcome. Nice to see everybody in the virtual world, and thanks everyone for joining us here tonight's MEA Candidate Forum. I'm going to give folks just 1 more minute to get on and get situated, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If anyone has any questions or is running into any issues, feel free to type those into the chat on either Facebook or here on Zoom, and we'll get you squared away. Great. Well, I think we'll go ahead and jump in because I think we have a lot to talk about tonight. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Melissa Hoyer. I'm the director of the Susitna River Coalition based up in Talkeetna, up in the upper edge of the MEA district. And we're really excited to be here tonight and excited to talk about MEA elections yet again. It seems like it wasn't that long ago that the last election happened, and somehow it's been a whole year. I also just want to say June Okada, our energy coordinator, is here, and she'll be monitoring chats and providing additional resources as we go. So if you have any questions or things that are happening while we're going, feel free to reach out, and she'll help you on both Zoom and Facebook. And then also be dealing with questions at the end of the evening tonight. So this is exciting. This is our 4th annual candidate forum. We've been somehow doing this now for 4 years, and it's I think we've heard a lot of good feedback that it's a great way to get people known, especially on these big at-large seats that cover such a huge district, such a huge area. It's nice to be able to inform people throughout the whole boundary of the MEA area. We're really focused on raising awareness and informing the public about decisions that affect us through energy and around energy, and MEA has a lot of power in what happens. And so we really want to make sure people are getting out and voting in these elections and making sure that your voice is being heard. And so we have brought together candidates to talk about their thoughts and opinions on questions. They've all been given our questions ahead of time, though, as I've mentioned, the audience is welcome and encouraged to ask questions at the end. And Julie Esty is here too with MEA, and she is going to give a little bit of an overview about what MEA is and the utility and what it means to be an MEA member, and just a little bit of background before we dive in. As a little bit of background about SRC, we started in 2011 when the Susitna Dam was kind of jumping back up and formed to find alternatives for energy options in the rail belt, and getting more and more involved in the utility and making decisions about how energy is found and developed and used in our region is really important. And this is a really important way for people to get involved in that process. We have a number of opportunities if you want to get more involved in energy issues but don't want to be an MEA board member. There are a lot of opportunities through both SRC and MEA. I'm sure Julie will mention some of those, so feel free to reach out to either her or June if those things are of interest to you. And then otherwise, there's a lot more information on our website about all the energy items that we're doing. We sent out a candidate questionnaire. All of those questionnaires that were returned are on our website as well. MEA has a full rundown of all the candidates and videos, so feel free to check out their website too. And not to cover all of Julie's talking points, but elections do open here at the end of the week, so make sure to vote and tell your friends to vote. And we'd love to see those numbers increase this year. It's around I think 11%, and we'd like to see that a lot higher of people engaging in the utility. So there are 9 candidates running this year for 2 at-large seats. We have 4 candidates joining us this evening, though all candidates were informed and welcomed and invited a number of times to this event. Tonight, folks were unable to come due to scheduling conflicts or did not respond, but everyone was invited through a lot of different sources. So we like to have the whole gamut join us. And I'll have folks introduce themselves very briefly after Julie talks about MEA. And then just so folks online know, there is a 2-minute limit for candidates to answer their questions, which they are aware of and were made aware of ahead of time. So if there's kind of an abrupt end, that's what's happening. And so we're just going to try to keep it short. We do have quite a few questions and information to cover tonight. So with that, I will pass it off to Julie to talk about MEA. It's so great to have you here with us again. And I'm excited for you to share all these things with folks about the utility. And sorry, just before you jump in, I will say if you do have specific questions about the utility, about the election, about being an MEA member, you can ask those questions. And as soon as Julie's done, you don't need to wait till the end of the evening to ask those specific ones. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Julie.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks to you and June and the Susitna River Coalition crew for doing this. This is one of the most important things we can do as members of a cooperative. So MEA is a cooperative, which means that we are owned by all of you and everybody who pays for our electric bills, including me and the majority of our employees as well. And there's some benefits around having a member-owned co-op be your electric provider instead of folks with shareholders from all over the country or the world. And one of those is your power to elect the people who are making the decisions, your board members. And so that's why we're here tonight. I'm really glad that so many folks have joined and that we have so many really amazing board candidates to choose from. It's going to be a hard choice for all of us, that's for sure. So yeah, we have the opportunity this year and every year to vote for board members. They rotate, and those are the folks that are making the strategic governance decisions for your co-op and directing the CEO, who then in turn directs the staff. So voting is critical because it really sets the direction. It is the way that we can hear from our members on what direction that they want by who they choose to place in these seats. So voting is key. Not only are you voting on your board of directors, but we have some bylaw changes on the ballot as well. The bylaws are what the members use to tell their board how to govern. And so those are also critical and foundational to having a cooperative. So voting, attending the annual meeting, the annual meeting this year is on April 25th. You can join either by Zoom or you can join in person. And last year we had both in person and Zoom for the first time, and we almost doubled the amount of participation. So a lot of people like to join by Zoom. It also meant that in person was a little lower. So we're doing it at a smaller venue. We're doing it at the Palmer Depot this year. So we're going to try that and continue to welcome people both in person and on Zoom. So we hope you'll join us. Also during that meeting, that's when you do find out the election results, at least the preliminary election results. They are then ratified by the board after they see the full process from start to finish from the election overseer. Other opportunities to be part of MEA, there's both bylaw and election committees. Though the bylaw committee is looking at the bylaws, hearing thoughts from both staff and members and the board about things that potentially could change. This year, we actually have 4 bylaw amendments. We just did a big reset of our bylaws. Our bylaws had been going under changes for 80 years. And so they were a little hard to follow sometimes, a little duplicative. And we wanted to make sure that they were up to the current laws and statutes of the state. So we did a reset of our bylaws. And then, of course, there's a few little changes. One of those is confirming what a member in good standing means. That's a definition. There's also a definition of patron, what it means to have rights within the cooperative. And then we also are adding tribal governments to our list of government entities that are recognized by the cooperative. In addition, there's another bylaw amendment that is focused on capital credits. And if there's a member, one of our members who owes the cooperative money, they didn't pay bills or something, and if once they're deceased, it allows us, those capital credits come back to the cooperative, but it usually takes the years that it takes for capital credits to be paid back. This bylaw change would allow those to come off the rest of the members' liabilities immediately. So there's a few of those changes, as well as 2 candidates. Again, as Melissa said, the elections open Thursday at noon online. That's also Thursday morning is when all of the election packets get sent out from the big mail house in Anchorage. And so they'll take, some people may get them Friday, but it might be Saturday or Monday by the time they reach you. And then voting is open until Monday, April 24th. Except for those that want to vote in person at the annual meeting. That is an option. You can't have voted online or with paper ballot anywhere else, but you can wait, and each of the candidates has the opportunity to provide a brief introduction of themselves if you want to meet them beforehand and ask questions. Just gives people another chance if they want to see the candidates in person or talk to them person to person to vote there. So you've got three options, either online. You can mail in your paper ballot that'll come to your home or mailbox, or in person. So what comes to you is you get this board packet. It has information on each of the candidates that they submitted exactly as they're submitted. And it has information on how to vote as well as the bylaw amendments. In addition to this, we have information on our website, including, as Melissa said, each of the candidate profiles. We've also done brief videos with each of the candidates so you can get a chance to know them beyond just paper. And then you get a ballot. You'll choose just two of these amazing board candidates. Again, it's going to be a hard choice, as well as voting yes or no on each of the bylaw proposals. And then you put it in this little envelope. And the key to making your vote count is to sign the back. That's the way that we verify that it is in fact a member and not just somebody pulling them out of the trash like we see at the post office for people who choose not to vote. So that is one of the methods that we have to verify that it is indeed our members who are voting. So every member who votes will be entered to win a year of electricity. And if you vote online, which we're really promoting, there'll be weekly drawings for gift certificates as well. And there's also an opportunity to sign up for paperless, both election materials and billing, which helps save all of us money and paper and all of that good stuff. If there's any questions about how to cast a vote, the board actually, by the bylaws, hires an election overseer, and that's through Fosselman and Associates. It's a CPA, local CPA. They make sure the integrity of the election is kept sound, also being helped by the election committee, who is the members' voice and representation to make sure, again, that the elections are being run as they should be. So if you have any questions, that overseer hotline is up online as well as in your election booklet. And I know you guys are not here to listen to me all night. You want to listen to the candidates. So I will stop there, answer any questions, and just remind folks to vote. And please join us on April 25th for the annual meeting to hear what's going on with your cooperative, meet the candidates, and ask questions too. You can also ask questions. Oh, and I will say we have some board members that represent specific districts or areas of our service territory. And we also have at large. So both of these seats are at large, meaning that they will represent the entire service territory, not just a specific population. And we're in a transition right now. And so one of these seats, the seats with the most votes, will serve a 4-year term. The year with the second most votes will serve a 3-year term. And that's all explained in the election booklet. So as promised, I'll stop talking. And then as the candidates go out, I will just turn my camera off so you guys can focus on the candidates, but I'm here and happy to answer questions as they come up. Thanks, Melissa.
Great, thank you so much, Jude. Thank you so much, Julie. Are there any questions here on Facebook or here on Zoom? Okay, I don't think there are now. If people do have questions, you're welcome to ask them later and we'll get them answered at the end of the forum as well.
Great. With
that, I think we'll go ahead and jump right in. I'd like to let people just do a very, very short, say who you are and what part of the district you're from, what part of the region you're from, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Anastasia, you are going to get our first question, so I will let you jump off with just stating who you are and where you are in the district, and then I'll jump to the next person, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. My name is Anastasia Beretta, and I am located in Eagle River.
Great, thank you. Connie, would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Connie Fredenberg, and I live in Palmer.
Thank you, Connie. Brian, would you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Brian Sherry, and I live in the Fishhook community.
Great, thank you. And Dan, would you please introduce yourself?
Dan Tucker, and I live right on the edge of the Palmer District next to Sword Meridian, which is Wasilla District.
Great, thank you. Okay, and through a very random rolling of the dice, we're going to kick Anna off here with our first question. All candidates will have the chance to answer these questions. Again, there is a 2-minute time limit, so please be brief in your answers. And if people who are watching have questions, again, feel free to type those in and we'll get everything answered here at the end of the forum tonight. We just have 5 questions we're going to run through for everyone. All right, Anastasia, sorry, I don't mean to keep calling you Anastasia. Cooperatives are democratic organizations controlled by their members who actively participate in setting policies and making decisions. The board is tasked with setting the vision of the organization. How do you feel your role as a board member fits into the member-owner cooperative model? I will also paste this in the chat for the panelists.
So thank you, Melissa. I think Julie made a really great comment about how vital it is as cooperative members for us to take an active role in what's going on within our co-op and within our utilities. So as a board member, I think it's even more important because we're here to represent our communities and listen to what our communities are saying and then bring it back and reflect it within our utility. We're really unique with the MEA board in that we're not trying to turn a profit, and we're really trying to provide the necessities for our neighbors in an affordable, reliable way. So we serve a very kind of interesting position considering any other for-profit organizations, but it's very important that we're listening to our communities and bringing that back into the co-op. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Connie, would you answer next, please?
Yeah, so I see my role as becoming an informed member of the board of directors that seriously considers the long-term consequences of all decisions as they relate to rates and reliability and safety. But I think that my job is to educate the members in my area about what sort of plans we are considering. My work in rural Alaska was always to work with the youth in the schools and let them know what we were doing as we worked on developing renewable energy projects there. So I would like to do the same thing if I were on the board of directors, is to create materials that explain what sort of projects are possible and get feedback from the members. I can't pretend I'm a big proponent of renewable energy, but I do not have rose-colored glasses on. They got stomped on long ago during a lot of these projects. I feel like I was on the bleeding edge of a lot of these projects. But a lot of the bugs have been worked out. So I don't see a lot of difference between a rural community as a microgrid versus microgrids we could develop along MEA's corridor. So I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Brian, would you go next, please?
Mute button's going to be the death of me. I think for any organization, especially a co-op, for it to remain healthy and to be effective, it's important. In fact, it's imperative that the members and the owners of the co-op get involved, stay involved in the process, just so that they're aware of getting what's going on, where the organization is going, and to feel like they have some sort of input into the decisions that are made in the directions that are going. My commitment is to provide feedback, honest opinions to management, ensure that management always acts in the best interest of the members, solicit opinions, listen to the concerns of members, review the practices, review proposals, purchases, personnel decisions to the extent that I can contribute, and make recommendations and provide whatever feedback I can to assist management and represent the membership.
I think you were muted, Melissa, on that one.
I was. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Dan, would you please answer next?
Sure. I've been a member owner of MEA for 45 years now. In 1977, I built my house. MEA was on strike because the board was not directing the CEO, the general manager at the time, on the right way to do things. So where I see that is that the members of the board are supposed to have the interest of the members of the cooperative in mind and make sure that the cooperative is working on the behalf of itself and its members. During the time I've been with MEA, I've been on the election committee and the bylaws committee. I've got 15 years on one, 12 years on the other. I've been quite intimately involved with some of the structuring, restructuring, changing. I think just a moment ago, I introduced myself saying Palmer District, Matanuska District. And one of the first bylaw changes that I promulgated was to get Palmer and Wasilla taken out. And now it's Susitna District and Matanuska District. So we don't have the city rivalry that we used to have. As a board member, since I've been a board member now for more than 2 years, I've attended more than 20 different courses in board management, board decisions, board process and procedure, transparency of operations, and how to outreach and involve the community and the members in the activities. I've also learned that being informed, as Connie mentioned, if you're informed in what the board is doing, then when the members have questions, you can help to answer some of them and help them understand that we're planning 20 and 30 years out in the future to make sure that we can flick the lights on when the time comes. I do understand well from those courses how the board is supposed to work. And as a member of the board actively participating, I can assure you both that we do work that way. And we're going to keep working that way.
Okay, thank you, Dan, very much. Great. Okay, our next question will be for Connie. What do you think, and everyone will have again the chance to answer this question. What do you think, if anything, should change about the transparency of decisions being made by the MEA board?
Well, I will have to admit that I had to Google this because I had no idea really what to say. And it appears to me that the monthly meetings are well advertised and available for members to attend by Zoom or in person. So nothing to hide there. I see that there are several committees that members can volunteer to participate on, ones that are vital to the operation of the board, like you guys mentioned with bylaws and the election committees. So that seems like the board's doing well. I know boards I've served on have to have executive session when you talk about personnel matters, but that's typical, I believe, of all boards. And yeah, I just, as a board member, I used to be a school teacher, and it's in my nature that I would volunteer to create materials to educate membership about the things the board is talking about. I think that'd be good. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, would you answer that question, please?
In general, it's always advocate for more transparency. It's always better than less, even if occasionally you do get some warts and blemishes exposed. I think MEA, like a lot of community organizations across the state, I presume across the country, struggle to find that voice and that mechanism to communicate with their members of the organization, to get them involved and to encourage them to be involved and to stress the importance of their involvement in the organization. I think it's absolutely imperative we be as absolutely transparent as we can, because when you're not transparent, it tends to breed a lot of distrust, which tends to make people cynical, and then they tend to park themselves and say, well, I'm just not going to get involved. So I tend to be a very gregarious person. I will tell you what I'm thinking. I will encourage you to get involved in whatever part of your community interests you. And I can't say that there ever shouldn't be executive sessions, because as Connie rightly pointed out, there are times, but I think that they need to be few and far between. And I think as a board member, embracing people, not literally physically, of course, that puts you have human resources, but to welcome them and to make them feel like they are a part of the organization. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Dan, would you please answer next?
In order to answer this correctly, I'd have to go back in history and say that during the 80s and 90s and in the early 2000s, there was a lack of board transparency. There was a lack of any transparency at all. The cooperative was being driven by administration and by a select few, mostly politically motivated people. The board made a huge change by slowly changing over the membership of the board to people who were more progressive and more interested and more community oriented to the board that we have now. As I noted earlier, I've been to about 20 courses, at least 6 of which were specifically focused on transparency, ethics, and decisions and board communication, both within the board to staff, and also board to the membership. I'll add that with around 30 meetings under my belt so far, I've been a participant in making a number of decisions. The staff preparation of the information needed and reviewed was exemplary. Our staff is tremendous at supporting good ideas and promoting good ideas for the board to consider for our vision. And I'll add that they are quick to come up with any additional information that we have needed. The board approach to them was handled in a textbook manner. Excuse me. Got to get back on my notes. So the board discussion was open and forthright. The executive session has been mentioned. There are certain things that cannot be said in open meeting for, in some cases, legal reasons such as disclosure rules, and certainly anything having to do with pay and personnel. So I can assure that if the discussion occurred that uncovered those things, no decisions were made about it. It was just the revelations that were made in executive discussion, executive session, so that when the board reconvened, the discussion could be made open. The points relevant could be discussed, and the decision completion, in my opinion, has been just about what I would expect anyone else to want to come from it.
Okay, great, thank you, Dan. And Anastasia, would you please go next?
Yes. I believe that, like, I think Connie did a fantastic job of laying out the things that MEA is doing really well with their community meetings and with the different groups they have established to add insight in. But I do believe that more transparency is always something good to push for. With more transparency, it allows for more education for our co-op members, and more education allows for more informed decision making and more input that's got experience in it from people all around our area. And so I think if we're allowing for more transparency and kind of utilizing what we currently have through the MEA board, it will only open more opportunities for our members. So thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, I'd love for you to start our next question for us. In 2011, the state of Alaska resurrected previously discarded plans to dam the Susitna River, 87 river miles north of Talkeetna, the Susitna-Watana Dam. This continues to be a topic of discussion in Juneau and a goal of AEA's. The estimated price tag to construct the dam is $7 to $10 billion. Because this is a state project, the public and the ratepayers would foot the bill. Do you support the construction of the Susitna-Watana Dam, and is there anything you'd like to add about that?
I guess the short answer at this point, no, I do not support it. I think in an earlier response, my written response back to the Susitna River Coalition, I mentioned that I thought this project being about 2 decades old. I was wrong. It's 40 years old. Man, I hate when I lose decades. It's a big, shiny, it's bold, and it's got a vested community, but I have questions, I have concerns. You know, every time this comes up, I'm always reminded of that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Where George Clooney, characters played by George Clooney, is talking to Delmar and explaining to him why the TVA is flooding the valley. He says, yes, sir, South's going to change. Everything's going to be put on electricity and running on a paying basis. And then I think of how that movie ends. So my objection, or I don't necessarily objections, but my concerns focus on the economics, and they're floating the number of 7 to 10 billion. I've been in construction a long time, and I'm thinking they're probably 40% low. There's constructability issues just because of its location. That's a big effort to build something that far out, that remote, especially in something that is functionally the size of Hoover Dam. Professionally, I'm concerned about the seismic risk, whether or not it's in a seismically stable zone, and how well the geology would support the dam. And I'm also very concerned about the sediment load. Susitna River carries a lot of sediment, and I think as we're in a period of when glaciers receding, the sediment load is only going to get worse. So I'd be very concerned about the buildup of sediment on the upstream side of the dam. So at this point, let me reiterate, no, I'm open to having my mind changed about it. And I would certainly welcome any additional information, but the short answer again is I'm opposed to it at this point.
Great, thank you. And also, just as a small point of clarification, it did originally come up actually in the 1950s. So it's been around a very long time. Dan, would you mind going next?
No problem. I'll start by saying, knowing this is the Susitna River Coalition, I know nothing less than an absolute unconditional earth scorching no is expected. Anything else is probably not in your consideration. However, I actually participated in some of the original study work that was done for the proposed project, so I'm aware of it. I was a riverboat charter captain at the time and helped with some of the hydraulic studies, hydrological studies, carrying crews around to check them and so on. Having said that, I'll say that at the present time and under the current circumstances, I neither support nor condemn the Susitna-Watana proposal. There are arguments in favor of it, in support of it, and there are arguments against it, without a question. There have been studies that have established that the project would be unfeasible due to cost. There were a lot less population to spread that cost over, and there was a lot less demand for power at an efficient cost back then. It would be inadequate and not worthy of construction. And that may or may not be so. Again, those studies were done close to 30 years ago. And there's a huge difference in the supply and demand and so on. There are some technological changes that have occurred that are both in favor of and against the favor of such a project. Hydropower is consistently and worldwide one of the most economical powers that you can have. And it's certainly reasonably dependable, far more dependable than day-night solar and wind or no wind wind power. So there are some things that have to be taken into consideration, and possibly reconsidering the whole project would be appropriate. The reality is that thermal production, gas, is the only way that we are supplying power for the majority of the entire rail belt. And we're struggling with the gas to supply that. However, because of the lead and development time that's required, getting anything in place to substitute for the gas at the present time is going to be a problem. So it's going to take a huge parallel track to study and confirm which of the new and now favorable energy producing powers are better than the current carbon-based gas thermal energy production. The last thing I add, and this is again I'm in favor of it, but I do reflect that the Eklutna hydro facility has been producing the cheapest energy in the entire grid since 1929. Cheap, safe, reliable. Those are the things that we're all looking for. And I wonder if there's anything out there that can match it.
Thank you, Dan, and we welcome everyone of all opinions. That's why we're hosting this forum this evening. So I appreciate you being here and being candid with your response. Anastasia, would you please answer next?
Yes. So I do not support the dam. Through looking at my family's history, my history in Alaska, the Susitna watershed is very important to us, and the risks that are associated with the Watana project do not outweigh the rewards, in my opinion. We have a lot of other options that we need to start exploring as a cooperative and start exploring as a state. And the options that we have for renewable energy are growing cheaper. The technology is advancing. And so before we start looking at spending a very, very large amount of money on a project that has a lot of risks associated with it for things like fish and water that are very important to us Alaskans, I think it's really important that we start looking at other options first before we dive into that. And it's also a good reminder that not all renewable options are healthy for our lands. And although they may provide a cheaper, easy solution in the end, it's still going to put a lot of, it's still a very large upfront cost. And like I said, a lot of risks associated with it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Connie, would you please answer?
Yeah, I first became aware of the Susitna-Watana project in the early 2000s when I was doing work in rural energy at the Energy Authority, where all these big meetings of important people talking about Susitna-Watana. And I have to say that I never did think it was a very good idea. That high price tag is, as Brian said, probably way underestimated. So it's too expensive. It's too likely to cause damage to salmon populations. And I put food over a lot of other things. Food's important. So we don't want to risk the salmon. It's going to take a long time to construct. And we don't even know what the load's going to be once it's completed. You know, yeah, the population has grown, but now our population's starting to go back down. And I just don't think these large hydros are that good of an idea. Eklutna, though, pumped storage. Eklutna is perfect with the hill. It's perfect to do pumped storage. So that's like a battery. And so we could increase the output of Eklutna by doing the pumped storage project. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of other things. I've also read that the flooding that whole area, the rotting vegetation would put off a lot of CO2, which is kind of defeating the whole purpose of trying to get away from fossil fuels. So no, I don't support hydro, or I don't support the Susitna hydro.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Dan, if you would start us off with this next question. We know members are very concerned about reliability and rates. We've had a large number of power outages in the upper Susitna region and other remote areas on the ends of the utility system. How would you address reliability and redundancy and system redundancy to meet the power needs for the entire grid?
Yeah, I wanted to scroll that one into view. And this is question 4, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's number, oh, I skipped. I'm sorry, I can back it. I am happy to go up there. They don't need to be in order. I did actually skip one in accident. This is number 5. I can go back into the right order. Excuse me. I'll read this one first.
Okay,
MEA member surveys have shown consistently that over 70% of members support integrating more renewables. Recently, Hillcorp has warned that utilities about the dwindling natural gas supply in Cook Inlet, and the state has projected a shortfall by 2027. How do you think we should solve this problem?
my response to this is that this is probably a conundrum of the greatest degree. The reality is that there is no alternative for adequate electrical power currently available or in planning at the present time, nor for within the amount of time it will take to beat the dark, the term I use to beat the we're out of gas and so on and so forth. There are no viable options for thermal gas generation and no known solutions to the impending problem in time to overcome them. So we're up against the wall. Other than thermal generation, and even to keep thermal generation adequate, the people have to understand that the only workable alternative is to find more gas, while and until more technology and development come up with the necessary methods, means, and choices to solve the overall problem. The typical permitting process for Plan B through Plan Z is longer than the window of time that we need to have them in place and operating. And that's without considering any legal challenges or hurdles that might have to be overcome in the process. A technological miracle announced today might be able to be implemented by 2030. In order to keep our lights on under the present circumstances, thermal generation is the most likely and most assured option available until other methods and means become available. And while that keeps our lights on, technology and development will be pursued to resolve the larger issue of reducing carbon or carbon-free alternatives. I honestly believe that we all favor reduction on carbon-based energy sources. However, the majority of members support that goal, but are far less supportive of contributing money toward the alternative. Even more, most don't realize the simple expense of trying to meet them. It would be nice to put in a big enough solar farm to replace the occluded generation station, but it's impossible. It's unachievable. And battery energy storage systems can't store the power for the all-night day that we have in the middle of winter. So this is the biggest conundrum we're faced with right now.
Great, thank you. Anastasia.
I think that we definitely need to start exploring different avenues of renewable energy. I think Dan did a fantastic job of laying out kind of where we've been historically and a lot of the issues that we're currently facing. And I think that although we are going to be reliant on our natural gas supply for a while, we need to start making small changes to be more renewable, whether that be through smaller solar gardens. And so it's not a huge upfront cost for the entire co-op. It's sectioning it out by area and starting on a smaller scale. So we're reducing our dependence on natural gas slowly. It's not a full transition. And then I think this also ties in really well into the transparency of the co-op and allowing for more of our members to have an understanding of what's going on and for them to provide their input. And I think, like I said, MEA is doing a fantastic job now, but to push that a little bit more and to really ask for opinions so we have different ideas. There's a lot of ideas within our community, and we as board members need to listen to them and work to implement them to reduce our reliance on natural gas in the future.
Great, thank you. Connie, would you please answer next?
Yeah, I would 100% vote to invest in more renewable energy generation. And I like the idea of small microgrids. We have a lot of tribes. Well, we have Eklutna, Chickaloon, Kanik tribe. they're all eligible for different pots of money than the utility itself. They could develop microgrids for their area, their like a Plutna's village, they could have a microgrid, and there's a lot of villages that are starting to have community-owned solar projects, and they sell power back to their utility. And those IPPs, independent power producers, they also collect money, you know, from the utility as they sell power back to the grid, and then they can use that money to maintain their microgrids. And I think we should encourage more rooftop solar, more independent, you know, like consumer side, residential sized renewable energy, in addition to larger solar farms and wind farms. And, you know, you know, grant money is kind of a bad word to some folks, but I think grant money is a good thing, because if we don't apply for it, somebody else will. Our tax money has already gone to fund these grants, and these are all going to be coming out here fairly soon. We should jump on them right away to get started developing projects, because it does take some time to do the development. But there is money coming up that'll be available for it. Tribes get their own pot of money. Utilities are eligible for other monies. Residents are eligible for different pots of money. So I just think we need to jump on it right away and do it. Yeah, that Nike thing, just do it.
Great, thank you, Connie. And Brian, would you please answer next?
I agree that renewal rules are certainly going to be a part of the solution. If nothing else, it'll buy us some time, take some of the load off, and give us an opportunity to explore some solutions. This is kind of a multi-part question. And if you're asking me personally, would I advocate in investing in renewables? You bet. I'd say go for it. Find something that works for you, figure out how it works and make it work better, and then get out and sell that technology. But as I understand the legalities of it as a co-op, our abilities to invest are pretty limited. At present, I think we're looking at some options for funding. I think Connie pointed a bunch of these out, but they're from outside the co-op, like grants and federal aid and so forth. Short term, I think we're stuck with natural gas. It's hard to beat the energy density associated with natural gas. We're hooked on it, at least for the short run. There's no way we could come close to even building out anywhere near enough renewable capacity to replace the natural gas before 2027 or 2028. How this all plays out as we approach 2027, I don't know. It remains to be seen. It's going to be interesting. And Dan probably did as good a job as anybody in explaining where, I guess, the cold hard reality of where we're at. There may be some potential options that might stretch out the natural gas supply a few more years, which buy us a little bit more time, but they're going to come with their own risks. Longer term, we need to find alternatives. Which may involve checking all the above boxes. Whatever direction we need to go is going to require a reasoned, disciplined, consistent approach. It's going to take input from a lot of different sectors, a lot of different people, and a lot of exploring and discussion.
Great, thank you, Brian. And now we'll go into our last question, which I accidentally previewed previously to Dan. Sorry about that. And then after this, we'll open it up to audience questions. So if you do have questions that you've been thinking about, feel free to start writing them into our Q&A box here on Zoom or typing them into the chat on Facebook, and we'll get to those after this next round. Anna, I'll have you start this question. Our last one, we know members are very concerned about reliability and rates. We've had a large number of power outages in the upper Susitna region and other remote areas on the ends of the utility system. How would you address reliability and system redundancy to meet the power needs for the entire grid?
I think power is definitely one of the utilities that is, it's vital for us, and we need to strengthen the areas that are having these issues with power outages. And I think this again relates into the question above, or the previous question, with if we were able to create smaller grids of energy for these communities, and and then work on our power storage for these smaller grids and then sharing along the power belt. I think that would be really beneficial for the co-op as a whole. If we are, if we're able to store the power that we're creating and then distribute it along the belt, it'll help a lot with redundancies. We have the opportunity to reduce costs for everybody, and it gives the different neighborhoods more control over what they're doing in the different areas within the co-op, more control. So, thank you.
Thank you. Connie, would you please answer next?
You caught me off guard. Yeah, well, back to my microgrid thing. I think that Talkeetna is a good spot for a microgrid, and hospitals and schools, neighborhoods can be powered by microgrids that when there's an outage overall, that particular area can disconnect from the grid and maintain their own power. And there's a lot of money coming to be, I keep going back to this grant thing, but the what is it called? Investment. Okay, change the IRA, whatever that stands for now, infrastructure grant money that's coming out is gonna make this possible. So, and it takes the heat off the utility. If these different areas are developing their microgrids, the thing that the utility has to deal with is the interconnection and the integration with the grid. So it's not like the utility has to do all of this work. It can be done by different groups along the distribution system. Yeah, and energy storage, pumped storage up at Eklutna is a big one that we could take advantage of with not a whole lot of effort. It's been looked at quite a bit already. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Brian. Answer this question, please.
January of, make sure I'm off mute. January of 2020 or 2022 was probably the most brutal winter I can remember, with the wind and all the power outages. And that was kind of one of the things that got me interested in the MEA, is how they kept all these parts and pieces going during some really bad windstorms. A lot of downed trees, a lot of people without power. I guess if I look at this overall, I look at the MEA distribution system, the grid, and after sitting through the presentation by the staff there at the Eklutna power plant last month, I am amazed at how that it keeps up and going. It's vulnerable in a lot of ways. One of the things that I would argue for is improving resilience, improving the reliability, not just from weather events, but as we've seen recently, a number of human-caused events, sabotage at stations in North Carolina, in California, South Dakota, New Mexico. So one of the things we have to do is make smart decisions based on how we put this together. Redundancy has a nice appeal, but it comes with pretty high cost. Questions that's always going to be a question, and how we're going to improve it and how we're going to harden it. From MEA standpoint, I think we can do a lot towards improving routing of our power lines. As customers can do a lot to improve your reliability by making smart decisions where you place your house and how far you are on the grid. And I think part of it too just comes with accepting the risk that you're living at the end of the grid in a rural Alaska that has bad weather. It's part of the experience, right? I think being prepared for that is a good sales pitch, and it's all part of the Alaska experience. So a lot of it involves personal decisions and personal choices, and in a lot of cases, building your own little microgrid for your friends and family.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Brian. And Dan, would you round this off for us?
I will. I've answered this in part with, this is another part of the whole rail belt energy problem. The single extension cord, and I use that term lightly, that ties Bradley Lake Hydro to the south to Golden Valley to the north, and the one that is the conductor for all the transmittable energy, is both fragile and on the edge of overload. If somebody built a power plant that ran on air and wanted to deliver it to everybody, we haven't got a transmission line that would carry it. So we need to look at that and understand that this is not just producing power. It's getting the power where it has to be. I've indicated the fragility of that line. Let's see, it's a conductor for all of transmittable energy is both fragile and on the edge of overload. The fragile part is that there's only one. If one avalanche or a flood or a fire takes out any single span of that line, just have one span of that line go down in the middle of the Eklutna Flats, and there is no power that can be transmitted from the Eklutna generation station north or to Fairbanks. And there's no power that could be transmitted from Fairbanks back to Anchorage. We can't share if the line's not connected. And this line runs from Bradley Lake to Fairbanks in bits, pieces, and parts. It's also stranded or causes stranding of various assets. So if the line goes down between Anchorage and Eagle River, we're fairly lucky because we do have the Eklutna generating station, which can carry our load, but Anchorage is really in trouble. Add in the fact that there's only a single gas line that feeds everything. There's no electric energy produced by thermal use by gas that doesn't come through that single gas line. And the only one that can recover from or that can withstand a break in that gas line is us. The Eklutna generation station is a multi-fuel station. They've got 3 million gallons of diesel fuel sitting on premises, and it would be an unnoticeable changeover from gas to diesel. But Chugach would be completely shut down. They wouldn't be able to put out a single watt of power. So we at least temporarily need to upgrade the gas line, make it redundant, and we also need to take care of the same thing with the power lines. The power drops up in Talkeetna. We're trying to add a redundant intertie in across the base of the mountain so that we've got more ways to feed the power into every point of the system. You gonna stop me?
Yep, I was going.
Okay.
Unless you need to wrap up this thought.
Okay, so I would say within the discussion, if anyone added anything anywhere in the system, the transmission of the additional power to share it literally cannot occur, except possibly on a very local basis. And that would be a start.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next we're now gonna jump into questions from the audience, and then when we're done with these, we'll wrap up and allow each candidate to do a final wrap up thought or any other messages you'd like to communicate out. And I will let someone volunteer after I read the question to go first, and we'll kind of round robin from there. The first question is: do you support a renewable portfolio standard, the RPS? For the rail belt, which would direct MEA and other utilities to increase the production of electricity from renewable energy sources to 80% by 2040. Why or why not? And I will also paste that in the chat. Would anyone love to?
I'll start. Yeah, I do support it because I think, as we've all discussed, and we understand that Hillcorp's told us there's no guarantee there's going to be enough gas. We've got to start looking at other things, and that renewable portfolio standard is the poker, to keep us moving towards it. So I think it's a good idea. I also did hear that there's a part of this proposal that's going to include that urban utilities could buy renewable energy credits from villages that are installing renewable power and have no use for their, I don't know if they still call them green tags. the renewable aspect of your energy, that they could sell that now to the urban utilities to help them meet that goal of 80%. So it helps the rural communities as well as the urban utilities. That's it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question?
Sure, I'll hop in on it. I agree with Connie. I think it's a good prod, but I think like a lot of the stuff, the devil's in the details. I would be more inclined to support something that was more outcome-based or performance-based, whether or not if the goal is actually to reduce carbon, that might be a more achievable goal. I think it's incumbent on the professionals that manage these systems to figure out how it works. I'm not entirely opposed to the renewable energy portfolio, but again, the devil is very much in the details.
Great, thank you, Brian.
I can take it next. I agree with what both Brian and Connie have said. It's definitely something I think we should aim for. We should definitely aim for 80% renewable energy by 2040. But as Dan has pointed out, it's we're very far from that, and we need to be realistic with our goals, and we need to be making sure that we're implementing renewable energy products that are renewable energy projects that are not harming our land, that are helping create that renewable energy, but aren't damaging our fish, aren't damaging our wildlife habitat. We need to keep the checks and balances and make sure that we're producing clean energy that's not with the fault of our land.
Great, thank you. And Dan, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'll weigh in. We're in some real challenging times right now. We're up against a wall because the reality is everybody wants to have electricity to come from somewhere where there's no carbon involved, but technology hasn't achieved that point where it has found any way to provide sufficient power 24/7, 365 without using thermal generation. That's just the way it is. Hydro is the next closest thing right now. We've got many things that are on the horizon. Small nuclear is just now starting to poke its nose up as a possible viable source of energy that is carbon free. And it has some tremendous advantages. The reality is, again, we get into the lag time thing. If we decided today, let's do this, it would be at least 5 years before it could be done, simply because of the delivery time. We're working on a battery energy storage system that we're going to share with you guys that's still 3 to 5 years out, and we've been working on it for a couple of years. It takes that long to make these dreams come true if they can, and technology is trying real hard, working real hard, doing it as fast as they can. We'll embrace all of that, I can assure you, as soon as it's viable and realistic.
Thank you. Okay, the next question we have, we'll do the first of this. If you'd like to answer, whoever would like to answer this one first, please feel welcome. MEA is one of 3 parties responsible for addressing the impacts of the Eklutna hydroelectric project on fish and wildlife habitat. Because the Eklutna hydroelectric project infrastructure doesn't release water, wild salmon are unable to migrate through the majority of the river system. Do you support returning fish passage to Eklutna Lake and returning adequate water to the Eklutna River in order to support the revitalization of wild salmon for the benefit of the native village of Eklutna and area residents? How, and if so, how would you be a leader in helping to make that happen and advance solutions?
Okay, I'm going to jump on this one too. Pumped storage. I just read a report that if they were to implement this pumped storage plan, it would allow more water to get back into the river so that it would make it better for the fish. Now, I just read that today. I only read one report, so I'm not positive, but it looked promising, like that was going to fix that issue. with the fish.
Okay, thank you, Connie. And Dan, looks like your hand is up.
Yeah, this is an issue that has been under advice. It's been under study. We're 2 or 3 years into a multi-year study in coming up with some answers to that, to the discussion of the question. There has been, at least, if I'm not mistaken, at least one dam that's been completely removed. Another one has been resolved, and pump storage has been discussed. There are other alternatives that are being discussed. One of the problems with pump storage is that it often takes as much power to pump the water back up as it did to get it down. So you have a high cost because it costs some money to pump it up. Doesn't cost anything to let it fall down. The bottom line is you end up paying to put water back into the river or into the lake. The studies should show how much water can be released, should be released, and is needed to be released in order to sustain fish. And I believe, although I haven't read all the details of the study, I believe that they've already concluded that there is a way to bring enough water into the river to be able to sustain the fishery, or reestablish and sustain the fish without losing the production and participation of the Eklutna hydro plant.
Thank you, Dan. Brian or Anastasia, would either of you like to answer that question?
I don't know that I can really answer. I will comment, and I think that if there's a possibility, a way to do it that's reasonable, I think that it should be pursued. It sounds like they're studying it, and I look forward to seeing how those studies, what the studies finally end up recommending.
Thank you. Anastasia.
I definitely am. I'm always an advocate for the wildlife and an advocate for our fish and our sustainable food resource. And so I think it's fantastic that we're putting in the work to do the research for what is going to be healthiest for our fish population. And it's great to know from Dan that we've started taking steps to make sure that that population is healthy. So I think it's really important that we stay mindful as a cooperative, and that we're, again, not affecting the land when we're taking energy into account and when we're looking at how we're producing our energy.
Melissa,
Yes.
if I could, one more bite on that apple.
Sure, go for it.
Let's not forget that the municipality of Anchorage is the new one in town that is taking water from Eklutna for the Anchorage watershed and for the power plant that they've got running their water treatment plant. So putting all of this on MEA is not necessarily a fair and reasonable item.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any other questions from the audience? Just double check Facebook here. I think got everyone from all the angles. Great. Okay, then I'm going to let us go ahead and round out the evening. We'll let folks go ahead and ask. If there's anything you'd like to add about your vision or role for the future of MEA, if there were ideas that you thought of during tonight's discussion that you'd like to build off of. I'm going to allow 3 minutes for this round off if you'd like. And Dan, because you answered, you got to go last in the round of questions. I'd love to give you first go at this last one. So I will pass it off to you.
Okay. I've said here, my prepared comments were study, knowledge, information, and awareness is necessary to make progress in all of these areas, along with the ability to see through the clamor for any and everything that some people think will solve this problem. Most of the dreams are practically achievable too far out in the future to have in place before we need them. People think that you can set up a solar farm and produce enough electricity to replace a power plant overnight. It doesn't happen in 5 years or even 10 in some cases. This entire problem needs to be worked on aggressively, but on parallel paths. We cannot reach the future until we survive the present, and the present doesn't end until we have the future in hand. That's crucial, that's critical. I've been involved and gained knowledge in the past, current, and progressive and future issues and potential solutions and situations. It's less than ideal to throw out what we know and or have learned just to have to restart, relearn, and restudy everything again. Because nothing is over until another change comes along, and then it doesn't even exist. One of the things that the directors need to be aware of is that the members depend on the co-op for their power. And it takes a certain amount of infrastructure to deliver that power. And there's a base cost in building and operating that infrastructure. Fragmenting the production of power decreases reliability and dependability. A sudden dump of the private or small solar units puts the load immediately back on the co-op. We can't forget that if all of these small projects come online, people think, oh, it's solved, until something happens and we lose enough of those small projects that we're once again depending on the co-op for everyone to turn their lights on. And the problem is that if everybody isn't participating, then it becomes more expensive that those are. Last, as for grants and such, I've always had a dim view of grants because I see the government take my taxes in pretty big chunks and give it back in grants that are not quite so large. Yeah, it's nice to have, it's nice to think we can get grants to do this and grants to do that. But let's not forget that it's our money that we had to earn, that we had to put into the system so they could be nice enough to give it back to us. Maybe it's better to just keep it at home and spend it on ourselves, doing the same thing without some of the rules, without some of the impositions.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Brian, would you want to go next? Just going in
Sure.
reverse order in case.
Just to keep us on our toes.
Right.
I think Dan has nailed it when he says we're kind of up against the wall. It's a very apt description. Change is coming. I want to be a part of that change. I think I can provide some useful input. I'm good at listening. I'm good at solving problems. I want to provide a voice and share the responsibility of managing this co-op. We kind of began this session by talking about the responsibilities, some of the importance of members being involved in the co-op. And I think part of that includes having an institutional knowledge of where we've been, how we solve problems, and where we're going, so we don't continually try to reinvent the wheel or come up with some different direction that hasn't been tried, or think that it has never been tried before. Everything that is new has probably been tried, maybe sometimes successfully, but things change. Time to revisit, but it's never, excuse me, never wrong to look to the past. By education, I'm a geologist. I'm a project manager by necessity. I've worked a lot of electrical projects, some renewable energy projects, and environmental remediation projects. I have a lot of different experiences. I think I bring a lot of value to the table. This is not a career move for me. I am not, nor have I ever been a professional politician. Too late in my life to start down that road, and I have too high of standards. I have zero desire to become a professional politician. I am just here to help. Whatever direction we need to go, it's going to require reason, discipline, and consistent approach. I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and share some of my ideas and thoughts, and I would really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Connie, would you please go next?
Yeah, well, I would have to say that all my experience and knowledge is limited to rural Alaska. But I think it's all very applicable to the situation that MEA finds itself in right now. There's a lot of funding coming for exactly the kind of projects that MEA needs to be looking into, and that money is strictly for renewable energy. There's no money coming out in this funding for fossil fuels. So, and that money has already been appropriated from our taxes. So if we don't apply for it, somebody else will, and they will get our money. I want us to get our money back, not having it go to other communities. And I think that all these small projects could relieve pressure on the gas plant and help stretch our gas further, because Dan's absolutely right. We need that gas plant for many years to come. But if we start relieving the pressure on it by having all these smaller renewable projects, that maybe it'll last longer. Let's see. Oh, and I did just want to say something about nuclear. I have gone and spoken with the folks at, like, they were at AFN, these micronuclear processor companies. They couldn't even tell me how much it was going to cost. It was like, they haven't even calculated that yet. And we live in an earthquake zone. I just think nuclear in an earthquake zone is a bad idea. And I just couldn't bring myself to be behind that. I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anastasia.
All right, well, I wanted to start by thanking the Susitna River Coalition and Melissa and June for putting this on. I think it's really vital that we as community members are able to share our opinions and share our views. And I think we all have different experiences and different lives that we've lived in this state. And it's really important that we all are able to share our voices and we're all able to share our opinions and what we see. So we're able to make sure everyone's voice is listened to and we're exploring all of our options. I think a lot of us have seen over this last year and the last couple of years how much inflation has hit all of us, and we're seeing it with our we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it with our food costs, with our travel costs. It's a very large part of our lives that we're seeing, and if we're able to start making changes now, that is going to allow us energy that is affordable as well as reliable and is on a smaller scale for different areas of our community. It's going to be beneficial all around. And I think it's very important that we start having conversations with those smaller areas to see what's going to work for everyone. I think our timeline from HillCorp is a great reminder of what short of a timeline we really have to start implementing these projects and to start having these conversations and really digging deep to get things set up. Our solution to natural gas is not going to come quickly, but we need to push for new solutions and options now so we don't end up at that 2027 deadline trying to figure out how we're going to heat our homes and keep our electricity on. So I think it's really important that we push for conversations between our members and we keep all lines and ideas open for what we have to come in the future. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for taking the time to participate and share your response and your time and dedication to the MEA district, and for just answering your questions so openly. And thanks for all the audience members who were able to participate and had questions. I'm sure that there are opportunities to reach and follow up with individuals through Julie, if that's something you're interested in. And Julie, again, as always, thank you for being here and providing information about the utility and for people to vote. I will let you have an opportunity to add any final comments you'd like to as well. If there's anything you want to add on or anything that you were reminded of during the panel.
Yeah, I will just echo the thanks to the Susitna River Coalition for helping our members find out more about the candidates. Again, this is a really important decision. We are at a crossroads with energy. We've talked about a lot of those elements tonight with how we provide energy, how we work together with other members of, with other utilities on the rail belt. We're also really working on future planning with other voices. So not just at the utility, but also bringing in independent power producers, consumer advocates, the state around the table as we look at integrated resource planning for the future. So it's an important time. We're at a key moment of opportunity between potential funds that are available, the the old way not being possible anymore as we look at the uncertain future of the Cook Inlet gas field. And so it's an important time, and this is an important election, and we really want to remind people to get out and vote and have your voices heard. So thanks again for the opportunity, and we look forward to seeing people at the annual meeting and seeing those ballots come in.
Great, thank you. And as a reminder, this Thursday, you can start voting. Vote, I would say vote early, vote often, but I guess just vote and only once.
But tell all your friends to vote.
Yeah, tell all your friends, do that often. Tell your friends often, only vote once. Yes, exactly. And thanks so much to June for helping to coordinate this whole part as well. And if you have questions, June is our amazing energy coordinator and can answer lots of questions as well and provide resources additionally. So good luck to all the candidates. Thank you again. And we will be looking to celebrate and being in contact with whoever is elected to the board in less than a month. So have a great evening, everyone, and thank you so much.